A storm is raging in the gospel world, and it's unlike anything we've seen before. Bishop Bernie Mac has publicly called out Kojic leaders Bishop J. Drew Sheard and Myron Williams, claiming lies, deception, and manipulation in the pulpit. The accusations aren't subtle. They're raw, explosive, and now the entire community is watching. What really happened behind closed doors? Who is telling the truth and who's hiding secrets? And why is this shaking one of the largest gospel denominations to its core? The revelations you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew about gospel leadership, trust, and accountability. The gospel community is no stranger to controversy, but few moments have ignited as much shock and debate as the recent clash between Bishop Bernie Mac and COGIC leaders Bishop J. Drew Sheard and Myron Williams. What started as quiet whispers behind closed doors has erupted into a full-blown public confrontation, exposing alleged lies, broken trust, and tensions that have been simmering for years. Bishop Bernie Mac, a respected voice in gospel circles, has taken a bold stance, speaking out about what he claims are misleading statements and manipulations happening from the pulpit. For many, his revelations are a wake-up call, a rare peek behind the curtain into a system that has long been considered untouchable. In this video, we'll dive deep into the unfolding drama. You'll hear the stories, see the evidence, and understand why this isn't just a dispute between leaders. It's a moment that's shaking the foundation of one of the largest gospel denominations in America. We'll uncover the details that no one is talking about, reveal the hidden tensions behind public appearances, and explore the consequences this could have for the gospel community at large. You won't believe some of the claims, and you'll be left questioning the very structures of trust and authority in the church. This is where it gets unbelievable. And it all starts with the first shocking accusations that set the stage for this confrontation. The drama began quietly, with subtle comments in private meetings and behind-the-scenes conversations, but it didn't stay quiet for long. Bishop Bernie Mac went public with accusations against Bishop J. Drew Sheard and Myron Williams, claiming that lies were being told from the pulpit, misrepresenting facts, and even misleading entire congregations. What made the situation explosive wasn't just the allegations themselves. It was the authority and credibility of the individuals involved. Bishop Bernie Mac has long been respected in the gospel community for his authenticity and willingness to speak uncomfortable truths. When he first voiced his concerns publicly, many listened closely, wondering if this was the tip of a much larger iceberg. According to sources, his accusations centered around misstatements during sermons, conflicting narratives about church decisions, and claims that certain leaders were manipulating information for personal or political gain within the denomination. The fallout was immediate. Social media erupted with debates, with members taking sides almost instantly. Some defended Sheard and Williams, pointing to their long histories of leadership and ministry achievements. Others applauded Bernie Mac for his courage, saying that he was finally holding leaders accountable in a community that often resists scrutiny. The tension escalated as clips of sermons, interviews, and statements were dissected line by line. Alleged contradictions in public statements were highlighted, and discussions about transparency and integrity flooded gospel forums and groups. Some congregants admitted they had previously ignored or rationalized discrepancies, but now felt compelled to question everything they had been taught. Perhaps most shocking was how quickly this controversy spread beyond just the leaders themselves. It ignited discussions in broader gospel circles about accountability, leadership ethics, and the responsibility of pastors to uphold truth in their teachings. The controversy wasn't just about individual egos anymore. It became a reflection of systemic issues within the denomination. But just when it seemed the situation had reached a breaking point, a series of leaked messages and insider testimonies emerged, and they took the conflict to a completely new level. People began sharing behind-the-scenes information that painted a far more complex picture than anything that had appeared in sermons or public statements. And what happened next changed everything, exposing layers of tension and secrecy that had been simmering quietly for years. Just when the public thought they had seen the full story, the controversy escalated in a way that few expected. A series of leaked messages, emails, and insider testimonies began circulating online and within private gospel networks, revealing details that many in the community had only speculated about. These weren't casual complaints, they were carefully documented accounts, some dating back years, that suggested a much deeper conflict between Bishop Bernie Mac and the Kojic leadership, particularly Bishop J. Drew Sheard and Myron Williams. The leaked materials included conversations between church staff, private correspondence about decisions made in leadership meetings, and even statements allegedly made by high-ranking members questioning the veracity of certain sermons. Bishop Bernie Mac's claims began to gain context. Insiders suggested that he had repeatedly raised concerns about inconsistencies and misleading narratives, only to face resistance and pushback from leaders unwilling to admit mistakes. One of the most revealing pieces of evidence involved sermons in which statements about church finances, initiatives, and member contributions were allegedly misrepresented. According to multiple sources, certain information presented from the pulpit was either exaggerated or omitted, creating an impression that aligned with leadership objectives rather than factual reality. For congregants who trusted their leaders implicitly, the implications were staggering. People began asking themselves, had we been misled for years without even realizing it? In addition to financial matters, the leaks suggested disputes over ministry influence and decision-making power. Some messages indicated attempts to consolidate authority, marginalize dissenting voices, and control narratives that shaped public perception. Bernie Mac's warnings, previously dismissed by some, now seem prescient. The documents painted a picture of internal struggles hidden behind polished sermons and public appearances. The community reaction was intense. Online forums buzzed with discussions dissecting the leaked content, while members of multiple congregations debated the meaning and implications of these revelations. Some felt vindicated, expressing relief that someone had finally brought hidden issues to light. Others expressed disillusionment, questioning whether long-standing trust in leadership had been misplaced. What made this stage of the controversy even more dramatic was the emotional weight of the testimonies. Individuals who had been personally affected shared stories of feeling silenced or pressured, of being caught between loyalty to the church and loyalty to truth. The leaks weren't just about factual inconsistencies. They highlighted the human cost of leadership decisions and the emotional toll on the congregation. And then came the next shockwave. Videos and audio recordings allegedly corroborating some of Bernie Mac's accusations surfaced, further escalating the tension. Suddenly, the conversation was no longer about internal disagreements. It was about integrity, accountability, and the very nature of truth in the pulpit. As the leaked messages, audio clips, and insider testimonies spread, the controversy moved from private whispers to a full-blown public confrontation. Bishop Bernie Mac, having already voiced concerns through social media posts and interviews, was now facing direct scrutiny from the gospel community, while Bishop J. Drew Sheard and Myron Williams were pressured to respond, not behind closed doors, but in front of an audience that numbered in the tens of thousands online. The confrontation began subtly, with statements released through official church channels. Bishop Sheard issued a carefully worded response, acknowledging differences of opinion, but denying allegations of dishonesty. Myron Williams echoed similar sentiments, emphasizing their commitment to ministry and their long-standing dedication to the gospel community. On the surface, it seemed measured, almost diplomatic, but the public reaction suggested otherwise. Social media platforms exploded. Clips of Bernie Mac's interviews, statements, and sermons went viral. Fans and church members dissected every word, comparing what was said publicly with what had emerged in the leaks. Online debates turned into heated exchanges with hashtags trending within hours. Some users framed Bernie Mac as a whistleblower, courageously exposing the truth. Others criticized him for allegedly airing internal conflicts publicly instead of handling them privately, arguing that church unity should come first. But beneath the surface of this media storm was a deeper, more emotional layer. Many congregants expressed shock at the apparent discrepancies between what had been preached from the pulpit and what insiders claimed had actually occurred behind the scenes. Longtime members admitted they felt betrayed, confused, or angry. Younger generations of believers, already skeptical of institutional authority, amplified the conversation, sharing their frustration with church politics and opaque leadership practices. The intensity of the confrontation reached new heights when video footage of Bernie Mac addressing the issue at a gospel event surfaced. His words were direct, unwavering, and unapologetic. He did not shy away from calling out inconsistencies, nor did he hesitate to highlight the emotional and spiritual impact these actions had on congregants. It was clear that he intended not just to inform, but to provoke a reckoning. Meanwhile, Bishop Sheard and Myron Williams faced unprecedented scrutiny. Every public appearance, sermon, and statement was examined for tone, content, and intent. Media outlets covering gospel news picked up the story, amplifying the debate beyond the immediate congregation. The controversy had grown into a national discussion about leadership accountability, integrity in ministry, and the responsibilities of those who speak from the pulpit. What made this confrontation particularly volatile was the interplay between traditional church hierarchies and modern digital platforms. Whereas disputes in the past might have remained confined to boardrooms or denominational meetings, today's environment allows for instantaneous dissemination, instant feedback, and viral debates that can shape public perception within hours. The result was an unprecedented pressure cooker for all parties involved. And just when it seemed that the confrontation had reached its peak, a new twist emerged. A series of recordings allegedly corroborating some of Bernie Mac's claims surfaced online, reigniting conversations and leaving both leaders and congregants questioning what was real, what was true, and who could be trusted. As the controversy escalated, a deeper layer of the story began to surface, one that exposed not just public disagreements, but the hidden dynamics within the leadership structures of COGIC and how those dynamics affected congregations. Bishop Bernie Mac's allegations were no longer seen as isolated grievances. They became a lens through which the gospel community could examine systemic issues, internal politics, and the very culture of accountability in ministry. Insiders revealed that many of the conflicts stemmed from long-standing power struggles. Leadership decisions, they claimed, were sometimes driven more by personal influence, reputation, and political positioning than by spiritual guidance or the welfare of congregants. Bishop Bernie Mac's warnings were framed around this reality, that lies or misleading statements in the pulpit were not always accidental, but often reflective of a broader culture where image and authority took precedence over truth. Financial transparency was another critical aspect. Reports from multiple sources suggested discrepancies between what was publicly shared and what was actually happening behind the scenes. Some sermons allegedly presented a polished picture of initiatives, funding, and resource allocations, while internal communications revealed tension, conflicting accounts, and disagreements about how funds were being used. Congregants began questioning whether leadership priorities aligned with the spiritual mission or with institutional self-preservation. Beyond finances, insiders pointed to the emotional toll on church staff and members. Those who questioned decisions or sought clarity were sometimes marginalized or dismissed, fostering an environment of fear and caution. Bishop Bernie Mac emphasized that this culture of silence contributed to misinformation spreading unchecked, and he challenged leaders to reflect on whether maintaining authority had become more important than fostering integrity and trust. Additionally, there were claims about the manipulation of narratives in sermons to influence perception sermons, which ideally served to teach, uplift, and guide spiritually, were allegedly used at times to shape opinion, reinforce leadership authority, or silence dissent. For many congregants learning of these practices, the revelations were shocking. It forced them to confront a reality in which spiritual guidance and leadership politics were entwined in ways that could undermine faith rather than strengthen it. The hidden truths didn't stop there. Multiple testimonies suggested that attempts to reconcile internally were met with resistance. Bernie Mac reportedly tried several times to address concerns through official channels, seeking dialogue and transparency. Yet, according to insiders, his efforts were blocked, delayed, or redirected, which ultimately contributed to his decision to go public. These internal struggles illuminate why the confrontation became so explosive. The issue was no longer just about statements and sermons. It was about trust, ethics, and the moral responsibility of leaders. Bishop Bernie Mac's revelations challenged congregants to ask hard questions. Is the pulpit always a place of truth? Are leaders accountable for the narratives they present? And how far should spiritual authority go when it intersects with personal or institutional agendas? As the gospel community grappled with these revelations, tensions remained high. Members were forced to reconcile their devotion with the possibility that the system they trusted might not always operate with complete honesty. This period of introspection, debate, and uncertainty set the stage for what would be the most dramatic and controversial phase yet, one that brought accountability, confrontation, and potential transformation to the forefront. As the hidden truths began to surface, the controversy surrounding Bishop Bernie Mac versus Bishop J. Drew Sheard and Myron Williams exploded into a full-blown public spectacle. The moment the information became widely known, social media platforms became a battleground. Hashtags, trending topics, video clips, and screenshots circulated rapidly, fueling debates that cut across generations, congregations, and even denominations. The reactions were immediate and intense. Supporters of Bernie Mac flooded comment sections praising him for his bravery and transparency. Many shared personal stories of similar experiences in their own churches, feeling silenced, dismissed, or misled by leadership. They viewed Bernie Mac as a rare voice willing to challenge authority and hold leaders accountable, and his willingness to go public became a rallying cry for those who had long felt unheard. Conversely, critics argued that the public nature of the dispute was damaging to the gospel community as a whole. Some congregants accused Bernie Mac of airing internal disputes that should have been resolved behind closed doors, claiming that his actions could fracture the community and weaken trust in church leadership. Defenders of Bishop Sheard and Myron Williams emphasized their decades of service, highlighting accomplishments and contributions that, in their view, should not be overshadowed by controversy. The congregational fallout was equally significant. Some members of COGIC churches reportedly experienced confusion and frustration, unsure whom to believe or how to reconcile their loyalty to the denomination with the emerging revelations. Certain congregations became divided, with groups either aligning with Bernie Mac's calls for accountability or defending the established leadership. In some cases, longtime members considered leaving their churches, while others actively engaged in discussions demanding reform and transparency. Meanwhile, the controversy attracted attention from broader gospel news outlets. Interviews, panel discussions, and live streams dissected the situation from every angle. Analysts examined sermon recordings, leaked messages, and social media interactions, creating a multi-layered narrative that spanned credibility, ethics, and morality within ministry. Conversations about accountability, transparency, and leadership ethics in the gospel community reached audiences far beyond the initial congregations, making this a national discussion about faith, trust, and governance in church leadership.